Welcome to the On List. Let's talk about Parfums de Marly. Now, you guys might know that outside of Creed, I don't really touch too many of these super hyped luxury brands, the brands that attract all of the toxic guys that have alpha male complex issues or something to prove to the rest of humanity, even though most of us don't give a damn about them. In fact, we have to go out of our way to remind them how little they matter to us in our own day-to-day lives, right? So they get shoved into a locker basically, and then the door shut on them. Like, okay, just shut up. We don't care. Yes, you've got money, you've got a nice car, you've got six-pack abs, or maybe you don't, but you pretend you do because you're on the internet and no one can really verify. No one really cares anyway. So that's what I'm trying to say here. No one really cares. So, but these kind of people, though, they gravitate towards these brands. You know, they gravitate towards the Parfums de Marly, to the Creed, to the other really expensive, showy, pop the collars kind of brands. And the thing is, I don't like covering these brands because those people really come at me. It's like a heat-seeking missile, okay? And all the crazies come out of the woodwork, and next thing I'm blocking accounts left and right because all these really weird, obsessive types who feel like I've kind of called their mama a bad word or something by talking smack about a brand whose entire self-value and identity is wrapped up in this brand, right? So I try to okay, well, you guys seem to have liked my Electimus video, which was another luxury brand, a little bit lower down on the totem pole. Electimus doesn't really get hype like Parfums de Marly does. Electimus is more like Royal Crown or something where they're expensive. People know they're expensive, but people don't really flex that brand like they do Parfums de Marly. And there is something to be said about that, honestly. And if there was going to be a brand that overtook Creed as like the #1 luxury status flex brand, the brand that if you're a rap mogul or something, or a rock star or whatever, and you want to show your wealth, you do it with this fragrance brand. If any brand was going to overtake Creed in that regard, at least in the West, not in the Middle East. I know Spirit of Dubai is like $2,000 a bottle and stuff, and Rajadov has his crazy stuff too, but I mean just in like the United States and a lot of Western culture in general, if there was going to be a brand that would dethrone Creed in that regard, it would be Parfums de Marly. They are nipping at the heels. They are right there. They are literally right there. In fact, that's why the brand was sold last year to Advent Capital. Advent now has Parfums de Marly and its sister brand, Initio, which is a whole nother thing. That probably needs its own video anyway. But Parfums de Marly is such a hot commodity right now that they were purchased by a private capital group. So who knows, right? Someone's cooking in that kitchen for Parfums de Marly. Now, the thing is, I'm going to be as objective and unbiased as I can be about this brand because there are good things and there are bad things. I don't want to make it sound like this is going to be a 20-minute, 25-minute bash fest of me just slamming this brand, because a lot of this brand's fan base tends to be very shallow and self-absorbed. Doesn't mean the brand deserves to be painted with that brush, right? Because at the end of the day, they're just trying to sell bottles and make money like any other perfume brand, like Dior, like Chanel, like Creed, once again, any other brand. They're just trying to sell bottles. So if they have a certain angle that's going to make them more money, they will go with that angle. If that stops being a thing and they need to change it up and do something else, then they will rebrand and do something else. Okay, that's just, it's not necessarily personal. So I can't really make it personal with the brand. Now, that said, we've gotten all that stuff out of the way. Let's get down to the facts. The facts are that Parfums de Marly is in some ways more honest than Creed. I know that might blow your mind a bit, but see, Parfums de Marly never claims to be making fragrances from the 1800s or the 1700s or any other era. They don't claim to be from 300 years ago. They say very plainly on their website, no market copy, that they are inspired by Louis XV and the Chateau de Marly and the Perfumes Court and, you know, Court de Marly and all the racehorses. They are inspired by those things. They are inspired by those perfumes, which, by the way, exist, and you can see them at the Louvre in Paris, okay? Those original fragrances made for Louis XV, the formulas for those fragrances and the surviving bottles were kept, and they are at the Louvre if you want to look at them. But they are not pretending to be those fragrances. And the founder, Julian Sprecher, he has never once said that he is actually a descendant of seventh generation of this, that, or the other, that his great-great-great-grandpa was making the perfumes for Louis the Sun King. Never said that. There are no pretenses involved with this brand. They were founded in 2009, not 1779 or whatever, okay? They're not playing that game. And for that reason, and that reason alone, they are more honest than Creed is, because Creed has constantly rewritten their backstory to try and fit the narrative that they are much older and more prestigious than they actually are, you know. So now you can go back and watch my Creed video, which is really old these days. If you really want to learn, I could probably stand to redo it one day, but not right now. So now we know this brand is a bit more honest about what they are, which is a very expensive, luxury-oriented perfume brand. Now, the thing about Parfums de Marly is they name a lot of their fragrances after horses that were horses that Louis XV had in his stable. Not all their fragrances, but a lot of them, especially the early ones. The early ones were definitely named after horses. Now, Parfums de Marly may also be known to some as a attention-getting fragrance brand, because regardless of whether you perceive the brand as for status-flexing guys who think they're like, you know, Adonis, you know, given flesh or whatever, that whole psychological mumbo-jumbo, that stuff notwithstanding, they are definitely a loud fragrance brand, but different from like Amouage or something, because Amouage comes from Oman, and in the Middle East, all perfumes are loud because it's hot as hell. It's hot as hell over there. And if you don't make a strong fragrance, it's going to evaporate right off your skin. You're going outside, it's 110 degrees outside, zero humidity. You put some thin eau de cologne on your neck, it's going to burn off in 10 minutes, and nobody will smell you. So it's got to be heavy, got to be spicy, lots of oil, okay? That's just how it has to be. Montal fragrances are almost oil themselves. So, and they're the cheaper ones, because the little metal can and stuff. So, different kind of loudness though. More of an intentional, attention-grabbing loudness. And if you love that, if you love getting attention, then Parfums de Marly is a brand for you at any price, $100, $300. If getting everyone to do that, right, to turn their head at you, if that's worth the price of admission, then they will definitely sell you a $400 bottle. So that is not how it's always been for the brand. In fact, the brand has sort of vacillated back and forth between attention-grabbing fragrances and a little more traditional French design. The thing is, the attention-grabbing fragrances are obviously the ones that people talk about. They don't talk about the ones that don't get attention because they don't get attention, right? Seems obvious. But the early fragrances from this brand, the ones that launched the house, are a different breed from the ones that would come later that would define the brand's style. So the early fragrances launched in 2010, and I've smelled all four of them. I own two. They are Lipizan, Ispizan, Darly, and Shagia. Only Darly remains. Lipizan, Ispizan, Shagia are gone. Now the thing is, I like them. Wasn't a big fan of Shagia. Shagia was a weird synthetic oud, like an M7 kind of oud with lime mixed in. Very, very, very odd. Tart and not pleasant. But the other three were pretty good. Darly was like a sweeter, more of an ambery fragrance, muskier. Lipizan, which is my favorite of those four. Lipizan was a very classic, gentlemanly, rose, carnation, leather, Chypre. So it was like a sort of a lauder for men, but crossed with like some Baron by Evian, like some vintage era, 60s era Baron. So like the Baron meets lauder for men. And that's what Lipizzan was, and that to me was like amazing. But people weren't ready for that in 2010. That was way too old school. So it went, just went like that. And the other one, Ispizan, the tongue twister. Ispizan was kind of a victim of its time. So Ispizan was very much a woody amber fragrance. And there were lots of those in the 2000s, let me tell you. Okay. Gucci Pour Homme from 2003. Gucci Pour Homme spawned tons of imitators, you know. You could almost look at M7, which came out a year earlier, as kind of the older brother of that fragrance anyway. The Tom Ford era of Gucci was really crazy. But Gucci Pour Homme and M7 spawned lots of flankers and smell-alike fragrances from other brands. So people would put out a flanker that was styled after that in a pre-existing line. Or make an original fragrance, you know. They weren't all like hidden type of copycats. Some of them were more obvious, like clearly Bogart City Tower came out in 2008. Clearly Bogart City Tower was like their attempt at a Gucci Pour Homme style fragrance, but they went with a soapier profile, you know. And even Calvin Klein had one called Encounter from 2011, a year after Ispizan actually. But of all of those various woody amber type fragrances, you know, Kenneth Cole, RSVP, et cetera, Ispizan was kind of like the best of that crop. And I'm not saying that because it was more expensive than the rest, but it just was the most balanced. A lot of those other ones were too heavy-handed with the woody amber notes. They were scratchy, like Tom Ford Oud Wood scratchy. They were scratchy, or they were too dusty, you know. But the Ispizan was like just right. But like I said, early release from the house, people weren't really feeling it, so it went away. Now later on, 2011, 2012, we would see the shift to the louder fragrances that I was telling you about earlier, the really sweet, tonka heavy, musk heavy, lots of big bottom end materials that would carry the fragrance. So we would see Pegasus, we would see Godolphin, okay, we would see Galloway, we would see Herod, and they were all very big, very loud fragrances. Galloway was kind of more of a dry citrus fragrance with some vetiver in it. Still big and loud, but not sweet like the other ones were. But Godolphin was sort of like the Tuscan leather kind of fragrance, but it was more floral, had more rose in it. And then Herod was the foreshadowing of what was going to come later. Herod was kind of like foreshadowing Leighton. Herod was like the prequel trilogy for Leighton. So Herod came out in 2012, very big, very sweet, ambery fragrance, club banger fragrance. So again, all the young guys who are looking for action, looking to get laid, and they've got the money to spend on a Parfum fragrance, they're going to run out and buy the bottle and then spray it up and then gas everyone out. But that fragrance really set the brand on fire. And then, of course, in a couple years later, we would see, obviously, Leighton would come out. And then Leighton would get followed up by a bunch of Royal Essence fragrances that were themed after the Middle East. So we would see Parfum de Marly attempt to eat Amouage's lunch. They would try to eat their lunch, you know. Not successfully, though, but they would try. We would see Hobdon, Awajan, Acaster. So, and they all came in black bottles. And then after that, it would go back and forth a bit, you know. We would see the brand try to go into a cleaner, more office-safe direction with stuff like Percival. Percival was the first real fougere that the brand put out. A long time coming, right? 8 years later, but 2018, Percival came out, and it was the first real fougere the brand had. Then they would try and do a much drier, woodier fragrance with Kalan. And Kalan was almost like BR 540, but woodier. So men would like it more, I guess. Pepperier, woodier, but similar saffron, cashmeran kind of base. Then we would see the clear bottles come back, but this time the clear bottles were colored, whereas the original clear bottles that Lipizzan and Espizan were in, they just had a label on the side that told you what they were. We would see colored versions of the clear bottles. We would see Sedley, we would see Greenley, which Greenley has a really funny story, actually. Greenley was originally called Sutton. And, you know, Bond number 9, very famous for being litigious, very, very into suing people, threatening to sue people. So it's not besmirch. You know, they can't sue me for saying that because it's public record. They love suing people, you know. So, and they also love scaring people with threats of lawsuit. They are slap suit happy. They're very happy with slap suits, and they're also have gotten into trouble for other things too that I won't talk about here. It's not relevant to this video, but yeah, they're not a very nice brand. That's why a lot of content creators don't mess with their fragrances because everyone's scared of their legal team. But in this case, Parfums de Marly was putting out a fragrance called Sutton, and I guess Bond number 9 decided no, because there's a street in New York called Sutton, and Bond's thing is to have all the street names in New York City be theirs. You know, you can't name a fragrance after any place in New York City because we own New York. We are the kings of New York, like that movie, right? We are the kings of New York. We are Christopher Walken, okay? And there came the C&D letter. And I guess rather than have a long, drawn-out, ridiculous court battle, which I feel Parfums de Marly would have won that because Sutton is a name. It doesn't have to be Sutton Place in New York City. It could just be some guy named Sutton or a horse named Sutton. I could name my child Sutton if I had a baby. Bond's not going to sue me for naming my kid Sutton. They don't own that name. It's not copyrighted. It's the name of a street. But I guess they just said, you know what? We don't care. It's not important to us. So they renamed the fragrance Greenley. And if you have those really early bottles, like literally the first batch run where they were called Sutton, keep that in shrink wrap. Don't open it. Don't spray it. That's going to be worth so much money one day you can put your kids through college. You can pay off your mortgage with a bottle of Parfums de Marly by selling it on Sotheby's or whatever at auction. So, you know, so for like all of 6 months, that was the talk of the town. And Parfums de Marly just backed down from that. They didn't care. So I was kind of hoping they would fight it. I would love to see 2 perfume brands full of themselves, just hubris out the ass, go at it in court over a fucking name on a bottle. I would love to see that. Have everybody eat crow at the end of the day. Just blow all this money in court for nothing. Be hilarious. I'm also a fan of Schadenfreude, so that's why I would enjoy that. So anyhow, getting back on task here. The thing about Parfums de Marly, though, that people don't realize is that even though they've gone back and forth a bit with the club bangers and the cleaner, fresher things, and they also have very annoying price points, but you can get a lot of their stuff for half price if you know where to look, discounters, is that Parfums de Marly kind of plays the field. They know their fragrances are overpriced, and they are the ones letting discounters carry their fragrances for those lower prices. People don't realize that. They will directly sell to the same distributors who dump into Fragrance X or dump into, you know, FragranceNet or Perfume.com or wherever. They will sell to the same distributors who dump into those discounters as the ones who dump into Nordstrom or Macy's or wherever. And they don't really care if a bottle's getting marked up to $250 or all the way up to $400. They don't care. As long as it gets sold and they make whatever the margin is, as long as they make something on the bottle, they don't care. So it's like, it's only full price for the people who are lazy. It's only full price for the people who are not willing to do a little extra legwork. It's like the dummy tax. Parfums de Marly is basically charging you a dummy tax. And if you go and you buy one of their fragrances from a discounter or a mom and pop shop that has it marked down half off to get rid of it, they don't care. They don't care. As long as you bought the bottle and they got some money, and you're wearing it, and you're happy, they're happy, everyone's happy. Let's all shake hands. So that's honestly a bit refreshing in a way. I mean, it's still kind of sad that they are letting places like Nordstrom charge $400 for it, or $380, whatever it is, while at the same time you can get it for like $220 somewhere else, or like I've seen it as low as like $150 when a really good sale, like $150 for some of them. And it's all condoned by the brand. They don't care. So it's like a giant dummy tax. It's hilarious. And then the other thing too that people don't realize, another big reveal for you guys, is that even though the brand seems very male oriented, because the online fragrance community is more guys who are, flexing on the brand, I guess, because like I said, it's one of those flex brands, but they actually sell more women's perfume. Yeah, that's right. Their top 2 best-selling fragrances are both women's fragrances, and they outsell Layton and Harrod and all the other ones by a wide margin. Not a little margin, by a wide margin. They literally sell like Delina like it's water, like it's going out of style, like it's go for broke, okay? And there's another women's fragrance that starts with a V. I can't think of the name of it. It's like called Vanya or something, or Vajana or whatever. But that one and Delina Exclusive, and the new lighter one they have now, those outsell all the men's stuff combined. Like literally more bottles of that are going out the door than any Laytons or any Harrods or anything. So all the guys out there who are like this with their Parfums de Marly collection, I don't know, man. It's actually the ladies who are flexing. There are more ladies out there flexing their Parfums de Marly than you guys are. You're losing, You're losing to the ladies. They're beating you at this game. You need to get good at this game, son. Why are you so bad at this game? Wow, why are you so bad? Wow, get good, son, get good. Letting the ladies beat you with their balls of Delina. So that's something else that people don't realize. They don't think about it. And to wrap the video up, honestly, I'm kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like I said, I own 2 of the older ones. I own Lipizan, I love it. I own Ispizan, it's pretty good. And I have a couple that I would like to have someday. I mean, I like Godolphin. Okay, I like Percival. I like Calon. I like the fresher ones from the house. I like Sedley. I like Greenley or Sutton or whatever. And the newer releases they've come out with recently, like Altair is pretty good. I like Altair. And the brand newest one, Perseus, is really good. And I don't want to spend, the money on it, but it's really good. And there are some folks who don't like it because it's another fresher. Again, whenever Parfums de Marly does a fresher fragrance, all the bros get mad. I'll leave it right here for you guys. Why do the bros get so angry when they release a fresh fragrance? Like, it can't always be some syrupy, heavy, ethyl maltol, Tonka bomb, annoying ass club fragrance. It can't always be, because brands don't survive when they only do one thing over and over again. I mean, if all Chanel did was constantly redoing Egoist, they'd have been out of business a long time ago. If Dior just kept with Fahrenheit or just kept with Sauvage, you can't. You got to mix it up. So Parfums de Marly is no different. Yeah, they are perhaps best known for their loud, attention-grabbing fragrances. That is clearly the thing that makes them the most money on the men's side of the counter, maybe not the women's, but they've got to mix it up. You got to have your fresh stuff. You got to have your occasional cologne-like thing, or your aquatic thing, or more of like a citrus and wood or whatever, or a spice fragrance that's not sweet, like a dry spice, like Callan was a dry spice. You got to mix it up. You can't just do one thing over and over again. That is career destruction in a nutshell. So, all right, what do you think about Parfums de Marly? Give me your honest take on it. I've given you mine. This has been The Unlist. Thanks for watching.